So let's now turn, knowing that perception is the gold standard. Seeing is believing, as they say. Knowing that, let's look to what perception gives you. What is the content of perception? And this is not, strangely, is not generally appreciated or understood. The first point Ayn Rand insists upon, and is the foundation of all the rest, perception gives you entities. Meaning what? Meaning if you perceive an apple, you don't perceive redness plus roundness plus sweetness plus slick surfaceness. You perceive an apple, and those attributes are abstracted out from the apple. This will become very important when I give my attack on sensationalism in a few minutes. So the first thing you must know that Ayn Rand stresses is that perception gives you entities, and it gives you attributes, it gives you actions, it gives you relationships, but as among entities. It does not give you free-floating aspects of entities. Now, I go on to add, it gives you a world of entities. Look around you. Philosophers are apt to imagine or take as their prime case of perception this. You see an apple as if the apple were floating in a void, in a black, featureless space. You see an apple. No, you always see. For those who may be not getting the video, I'm holding up an apple. The apple is in my hand, attached to my wrist, attached to my arm, that you're seeing against the black background, coincidentally with the earlier slide, of the curtains in a room at a certain height in a world, moving up and down that's what it is to see an apple. It's to see a scene, S-C-E-N-E, of which the apple is a part. So as I put it, perception is of a world of entities spatially arrayed. Entities are distinguished by their position. That's how we perceive it. As opposed to what? Well, you're eating ice cream, and you say, I taste some cinnamon in here. That cinnamon, as against the creaminess and the sugariness, is not spatially isolated for you. You can isolate that taste sensation, but you don't have an array of spaces of flavors that you can move upon and pick up one. Perception is of a world of entities spatially arrayed, and it's a world that you're in. Perception has a here where I am, and there, which is far from me. It's near to me and far from me. And you actually, of course, see parts of your bodies, and you see the edge of your nose. You are in that world. Perception gives you a sense of self in the world. And it's not a static world. It's a world in which you act and are acted upon. You act, you move, and your perception changes as you move. Right? Move your heads around, and you see things change. Right? Not only is it a world in which you move and act, if you don't move yourself through that world, you will not get the perceptual level. My old professor Richard Held and his associate Alan Hine did the classic experiment where they raised kittens in two conditions, active and passive. I'm going to zoom in. This is a cylinder with two kittens in it. I'm going to try and give you detail. You see the poor little thing on the left is riding in a gondola, going around this circular path. This is the only visual experience the kittens get up for the first several months of their lives. It's got those stripes just to give them something uniform to look at, something that is got a little bit of detail, but which is controlled. Across from him, there's the active kitten. You see the one on the right, you see from behind. It's tied to this apparatus, but it walks. The other one is carried. As the active one walks, it propels, it turns that shaft that goes across the top, and the passive one is drawn through the same environment. So the whole thing is to create two conditions. You ride or you walk. You see the same thing, exactly the same thing. There's only those walls to see, and otherwise they're raised in total darkness other than the hour they have in the carousel. So the two kittens see, in the sense of what comes in, exactly the same thing on average. Only the active kitten develops a perceptual level. If you take the passive kitten, and I've seen the films of this, you take the passive kittens after a month or so growing up in this, and you bring it to the edge, it just sits there. If you take the active kitten who moved himself and bring him to the edge, it puts its paws out. You put the kitten on the visual cliff, what they call the visual cliff, which is just a cliff, except there's glass so the kitten won't actually fall. So when they call it a visual cliff, what you have is a tabletop this high, and then patterned, textured floor that the kitten can see way down here, only there's plexiglass over it, so if the kitten walks off the cliff, it won't be hurt. That's the only reason it's called visual. It can see the drop-off, and it doesn't see the plexiglass. Normal kitten will avoid, it wants to walk from here to here, it will avoid the visual cliff. Passively raised kitten, riding through the same visual scene, will walk off the cliff half the time. We'll walk this way, we'll walk this way. It does not know that it's bad to fall off the cliff. So the interesting lesson is that there's not a mind-body dichotomy even on the perceptual level. There's what Held calls sensory-motor integration. Motor meaning what you do with your muscles, what you do in action in the world. This experiment shows that if you don't have feedback about what your own movements do to perception that comes in, you won't develop perception. You'll still see, oh, by the way, once the kittens who had been raised passively were given some time out of the gondola in the light, they learned. I don't remember how long it took, but it wasn't incredibly long. They learned to perceive naturally.